Welcome to HOA Rulebook. She printed the accusation before she checked the facts. I care what the bylaws say. Tracy Benson waved a bike room key fob in my face and screamed that I used it at the wrong time. She stood on my porch at Juniper Grove, shoulder-length blonde hair whipping in the Tampa afternoon heat, blue rain jacket zipped to her throat even though it was 85 degrees. Her handheld radio crackled on her hip. Behind her, two neighbors slowed their walk to stare. I am a property maintenance supervisor. I keep the grounds clean, the sprinklers running, the clubhouse lockable. I had just finished fixing a jammed gate motor when Tracy rolled up in her sedan, parked in a fire lane, and stormed across the grass. She held the key fob like a prosecutor holding a murder weapon. "You used this at 11:47 last night," she said. "The bike room is closed after 10. That is a violation." I told her I was not even home at 11:47. I was at my sister's place in Carrollwood until after midnight. Tracy smiled. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward me. The screen showed a blurry still frame of someone in a brown jacket near the bike room door. She said, "I have the timestamp right here. You cannot lie your way out of this." I leaned closer. The timestamp was unreadable, just a smear of white pixels at the bottom of the frame. The jacket could have been anyone's. I told her the footage proved nothing. She snapped the phone back, jabbed a finger at my chest, and said, "I am the one who decides what counts." That is her line. She uses it every time someone pushes back. I felt my stomach tighten. This was not about a bike room. This was about control. Tracy is the architectural committee member at Juniper Grove Homeowners Association, which means she enforces the paint color rules, the landscaping standards, and the storage unit policies. She also decides who gets warnings and who gets fines. She had been gunning for me ever since I filed a complaint 2 months earlier about selective enforcement. A unit owner on the 3rd floor had an entire patio garden that violated the balcony clutter rule, but Tracy let it slide because the owner was her friend. When I pointed that out at a community meeting, Tracy stood up and said I was creating a hostile environment. Now she was standing on my porch, accusing me of a violation I did not commit. She said, "You are lucky I am not harsher. I could suspend your access to all amenities right now. But I am giving you a chance to make this right. Pay the $50 fine by Friday, and we will forget this happened." I asked her what fine. She pulled a folded violation notice from her jacket pocket and handed it to me. The notice was printed on Juniper Grove letterhead, dated today, and it listed a bike room access violation with a $50 penalty. At the bottom, Tracy had stamped it with a portable rolling stamp pad she carries in her car. The stamp left a purple ink smudge that said "Official Notice." She slammed that stamp on the paper like a judge hammering a gavel. I could still see the purple residue on her thumb. I told her I was not paying for something I did not do. Tracy's smile disappeared. She said, "Then I will escalate this to the board, and you will face a hearing. You will lose access to guest parking and visitor passes. Your job will become very difficult when you cannot bring in contractors or vendors without board approval." That was when I realized this was bigger than a bike room. Tracy was threatening my livelihood. I am rebuilding my finances after a bad year. Last year, my car got totaled in an accident, my health insurance lapsed for 3 months, and I burned through my savings. I cannot absorb bogus fees or lose access that I need to do my job. If Tracy locked me out of guest parking, I would have to park off-site and walk tools in. If she blocked visitor passes, I would have to escort every vendor through the gate manually. It would add hours to every shift. Tracy turned and walked back to her car. She called over her shoulder, "You have until Friday." After that, I start the hearing process. She got in, slammed the door, and drove off. I stood there holding the violation notice, my hands shaking. 2 neighbors were still watching from the sidewalk. One of them shook his head and kept walking. The other one, a woman named Laura who lives in the building next to mine, mouthed the words "I am sorry" and hurried away. I went inside, locked the door, and sat on the couch. The notice felt like a trap. If I paid, I was admitting guilt. If I did not pay, Tracy would escalate, and I would lose access I needed to work. I pulled out my phone and checked my location history. At 11:47 the night before, I was at my sister's apartment in Carrollwood, 18 miles away. My phone's GPS log confirmed it. I took a screenshot and saved it to my files. Then I started thinking about the key fob. The bike room key fob system logs every entry. If someone used a fob at 11:47, the system would have a record of which fob it was. I texted Marco, the lead maintenance tech at the management company that handles Juniper Grove's contracts. Marco is a vendor who is sick of being blamed for things he did not do. He had been dealing with Tracy's complaints for months. Last month, she accused him of leaving the pool gate unlocked, even though the gate lock was broken and Marco had filed 3 work orders to replace it. Tracy ignored the work orders and filed a complaint against Marco with his supervisor. I texted Marco, "Do you have access to the bike room entry logs? I need to see who used a fob last night at 11,047. Marco replied 2 minutes later, "I can pull that. Give me an hour." While I waited, I went back outside and checked my doorbell camera. I have a basic Ring-style camera that records motion-triggered clips. I scrolled through the footage from the night before. At 11:32, I locked my front door and walked to my car. At 11:34, I drove out of the parking lot. The camera did not record anything else until 6:43 this morning, when I came back home. I downloaded the clips and saved them to my phone. An hour later, Marco texted me back. He sent a screenshot of the bike room entry log. The log showed 3 entries between 10 p.m. and midnight. The first entry was at 10:14 p.m., fob number 032. The second entry was at 11:47 p.m., fob number 032. The third entry was at 11:51 p.m., fob number 032. All 3 entries were the same fob. I texted Marco, "Whose fob is 032? Marco replied, "That is Tracy Benson's fob. She is the only one assigned that number." I stared at the screenshot. Tracy had used her own fob 3 times that night, including at the exact time she claimed I used mine. She was not accusing me because she had proof. She was accusing me to cover up her own activity. I asked Marco if he could print the log for me. He said he would drop it off in the morning. That night I could not sleep. I kept replaying Tracy's words in my head. "I am the one who decides what counts. You are lucky I am not harsher." She was not just enforcing rules. She was weaponizing them. I started wondering what else she had been doing. If she was willing to frame me for a bike room violation, what else was she willing to lie about? The next morning, Marco dropped off a printed copy of the bike room entry log. He also brought a coffee and a warning. He said, "Be careful with Tracy. She has been trying to get me fired for months. Last week, she called my supervisor and said I was harassing her. All I did was ask her to approve a repair invoice. My supervisor told me to stop engaging with her directly." I thanked Marco and promised to keep him out of it. He left, and I sat at my kitchen table with the log printout, my phone screenshots, and the violation notice. I had 3 pieces of evidence: the doorbell footage showing I was not home, the GPS log showing I was in Carrollwood, and the bike room log showing Tracy was the one using a fob at 11:47. I needed to confront her, but I needed to do it in a way that forced her to answer in front of witnesses. I decided to go to the management office. Juniper Grove contracts with a property management company called Clearwater Residential Services. Their Tampa office is about 15 minutes away. I called ahead and asked if I could meet with someone about a violation dispute. The receptionist, a woman named Diane, said I could come in any time before 3. She also mentioned that a regional supervisor named Greg was only in town today, And if I wanted someone higher up to look at my file, this was my one chance. That gave me a deadline. I had to get to the office, present my evidence, and force a resolution before Greg left town. I grabbed my folder, got in my car, and drove to Clearwater Residential Services. The office is in a low-rise building near the airport. The lobby smells like industrial carpet cleaner and burnt coffee. Diane sat behind a desk near the door, typing on a computer. She looked up when I walked in and smiled. She said, "You are here about the violation?" I nodded. Diane gestured to a row of plastic chairs against the wall. She said, "Have a seat. I will get someone for you." I sat down and pulled out my phone. I opened the Doorbell app and queued up the footage from the night before. I also opened my GPS screenshot. I wanted everything ready so I could play it immediately if Tracy tried to talk over me. 5 minutes later, the door to the back offices opened, and Tracy walked out. She was not supposed to be here. She was not staff. But she was carrying a clear sleeve clipboard and a rolling file cart like she was about to present evidence in a courtroom. The file cart rattled as she pulled it across the tile floor. Tracy saw me and stopped. Her expression shifted from surprise to anger. She said, "What are you doing here?" I told her I was disputing the violation. Tracy laughed. She said, "You cannot dispute it. The notice is already on record. You used the bike room after hours, and you were caught." She turned to Diane and said, "He is wasting your time. You should tell him to leave." Diane looked uncomfortable. She said, "He has a right to dispute it. That is policy." Tracy leaned on the desk and said, "I have the evidence right here." She tapped the clear sleeve clipboard. Inside the sleeve was a printed screenshot of the blurry bike room footage. The timestamp at the bottom was still unreadable. Tracy said, "This footage proves he was there." I filed the complaint, and it has been logged. I stood up and walked over to the desk. I said, "That footage does not prove anything. The timestamp is unreadable, and the person in the jacket could be anyone." Tracy's face flushed. She said, "I am the architectural committee member. I reviewed the footage, and I determined it was you. I am the one who decides what counts." I pulled out my phone and set it on the desk. I said, "I have doorbell footage showing I left my unit at 11:34 and did not return until 6:43 in the morning. I also have a GPS log showing I was in Carrollwood at 11:47. And I have the bike room entry log showing that the only fob used at 11:47 was yours." Tracy's mouth opened, then closed. Diane leaned forward and said, "Can I see that?" I handed her my phone. Diane played the doorbell clip, zoomed in on the GPS screenshot, and looked at the bike room log printout. She set the phone down and looked at Tracy. She said, "This log shows your fob was used 3 times that night." Tracy snatched the printout off the desk. She scanned it, then shook her head. She said, "This is fabricated. Someone altered the log. I never used my fob that night. I was home." Diane said, "The log comes directly from the access control system. It cannot be altered unless someone has admin access." Tracy said, "Then someone with admin access did it." She pointed at me. She said, "He is trying to frame me because I caught him." I stayed calm. I said, "If I fabricated the log, why does it show your fob number instead of mine?" Tracy did not answer. Diane looked at the clock on the wall and said, "Greg will be here in 10 minutes. Let me get him to review this." She stood up and walked into the back offices. Tracy glared at me. She said, "You think you are clever, but this will not work." I have been on this committee for 6 years. They trust me. We stood in silence. Tracy kept gripping the clipboard, her knuckles white. I could see the portable rolling stamp pad peeking out of the file cart. She had brought her entire arsenal, ready to bury me with paperwork. But now, the paperwork was turning against her. A few minutes later, Diane came back with a man in a gray polo shirt and khakis. He introduced himself as Greg, the regional supervisor. He shook my hand, then looked at Tracy. He said, "Diane showed me the evidence. I need to ask you a few questions." Tracy straightened up and said, "Of course." Greg gestured to a small conference room off the lobby. We all went inside. The room had a single table, 4 chairs, and a whiteboard on the wall. Greg sat down and spread the documents out in front of him. My doorbell footage screenshots, my GPS log, the bike room entry log, and Tracy's clipboard. He studied them for a minute, then looked at Tracy. He said, "This log shows your fob was used at the time you claim his fob was used. Can you explain that?" Tracy said, "I was not there. Someone must have cloned my fob." Greg raised an eyebrow. He said, "Do you have any evidence that your fob was cloned?" Tracy said no, but it is the only explanation. Greg said, "Or you used your fob, saw someone else in a brown jacket, and assumed it was him." Tracy shook her head. She said, "I know what I saw." Greg turned to me and said, "Do you have your key fob with you?" I pulled my keys out of my pocket and set them on the table. My fob was labeled 047. Greg wrote the number down. He looked at Tracy and said, "Can I see your key ring?" Tracy hesitated, then pulled her keys from her jacket pocket. She held up her key ring. 3 fobs hung from it. One of them was labeled 032. Greg said, "That matches the log." Tracy said, "That does not prove anything. Someone could have used my fob without my knowledge." Greg leaned back in his chair. He said, "If someone took your fob, used it 3 times in 4 minutes and returned it without you noticing, that would be a serious security breach. Have you filed a police report?" Tracy said nothing. Greg said, "I am going to pull the access logs for the last 6 months and compare them to the violation notices you have filed. If there is a pattern, we need to address it." Tracy stood up. She said, "This is ridiculous. I am being accused based on a fabricated log. I am done here." She grabbed her clipboard and walked out. The file cart stayed behind, tilted on its wheels in the corner. Greg watched her leave, then looked at me. He said, "Give me 24 hours. I will review everything and get back to you. In the meantime, consider the violation notice suspended." I thanked him and left. Outside, Tracy was sitting in her car in the parking lot. She was on her phone talking loudly. As I walked past, I heard her say, "He is trying to make me look bad. I need you to back me up." I kept walking. I did not know who she was talking to, but I knew she was recruiting people against me. That is her pattern. She claims she is neutral while actively recruiting people against me. She had done it before during the balcony clutter complaint. She convinced 3 other homeowners to sign a counter-complaint saying I was harassing her. If you are enjoying this HOA chaos, smash that like button and subscribe for more neighborhood justice stories. That night, I got a call from Laura, the neighbor who had watched Tracy confront me on my porch. Laura said, "I need to talk to you, but I cannot do it on camera. I am terrified of retaliation. Can we meet somewhere private?" I suggested the parking lot behind the clubhouse, away from the main buildings. Laura agreed. We met at 8 p.m., after dark. Laura was shaking. She said, "Tracy came to my unit this afternoon and asked me to sign a statement saying I saw you near the bike room last night. I told her I did not see you, and she got angry. She said if I did not sign, she would start looking into my parking permits." I asked Laura what she meant. Laura said, "I have a second parking space for my daughter who visits on weekends. Tracy said she would challenge the permit and force me to give up the space. She said she has been building a case against you, and she needs witnesses. She is going around to other homeowners and offering to drop violations if they sign statements. I told Laura I appreciated her telling me, but I understood if she did not want to get involved. Laura said, "I want to help, but I cannot be seen on camera. If Tracy finds out, she will come after me." I promised Laura I would keep her name out of it. But I needed to move faster. If Tracy was recruiting witnesses, she was building a counter-narrative. I went home and logged into the Juniper Grove homeowner portal. The portal is where residents submit maintenance requests, pay fees, and access community documents. I wanted to upload my evidence so it would be on record. But when I tried to log in, I got an error message. Access denied. I tried resetting my password. The system said my account had been locked by an administrator. I called the management office the next morning. Diane answered. I explained that my portal account was locked. Diane said, "Let me check." She put me on hold for 5 minutes. When she came back, she said, "Your account was locked yesterday at 4:15 p.m. by an admin user. The note says it was locked due to a pending investigation." I asked her who locked it. Diane said, "I cannot see the username, but only 3 people have admin access: me, Greg, and Tracy Benson." I felt my stomach drop. Tracy had locked me out of the portal so I could not submit evidence. That is the HOA method. Portal lockout so I cannot submit evidence. I asked Diane if she could unlock it. She said, "I will need Greg's approval. He is in meetings all morning, but I will get you an answer by this afternoon." I hung up and stared at my phone. Tracy was not just framing me, she was systematically cutting off my ability to fight back. She had locked my portal access, recruited witnesses, and filed a violation notice that was already on record. I needed a new plan. I called Marco and asked if he could pull the portal access logs. Marco said, "I do not have access to the admin side, but I know someone who does. Give me a few hours." While I waited, I decided to check the bike room myself. I drove to Juniper Grove, parked near the clubhouse, and walked to the bike room entrance. The door was propped open with a wooden wedge. Inside, the room smelled like rubber and mildew. Rows of bikes leaned against wall racks. In the back corner, I saw a metal storage locker with a padlock. The locker had a handwritten label taped to the front. "Committee use only." I pulled out my tiny flashlight and pointed it at the lock. The lock was a cheap combination lock, the kind you can buy at a hardware store for $8. I did not touch it, but I took a photo. I walked back outside and called Marco. He answered on the second ring. He said, "I got the portal logs. You are not going to believe this. Your account was locked at 4:15 yesterday, but before that, someone opened your pending appeal at 3:52 p.m. and deleted it. The log shows the action was taken from an admin account. The username is T. Benson." I asked Marco to send me a screenshot. He said, "Already done. Check your email." I opened my email on my phone. The screenshot showed the portal audit log. At 3:52 p.m. on the day Tracy confronted me, someone using the username T. Benson opened my appeal submission, then deleted it. 2 minutes later, the same account uploaded a new document titled Violation Evidence. 23 minutes later, the same account locked my access. The portal log showed my appeal existed before it disappeared. Tracy had deleted my evidence and locked me out so I could not resubmit it. I forwarded the screenshot to Greg with a short message. "Tracy deleted my appeal from the portal and locked my account. Attached is the audit log. Please review." I hit send and waited. 10 minutes later, Greg called me. He said, "I just saw your email. I am pulling Tracy's admin access right now. I also want you to come back to the office this afternoon. I need to show you something." I drove back to Clearwater Residential Services. Greg was waiting in the lobby with Diane. He led me into the conference room and closed the door. He said, I pulled the access logs for the last 6 months, like I told you I would. I found something disturbing. He opened a laptop and turned the screen toward me. The screen showed a spreadsheet with columns labeled date, fob number, entry time, and location. Greg said, Tracy's fob has been used in restricted areas at unusual times. Look at this. He pointed to a row in the spreadsheet. On September 18th, Tracy's fob was used to access the maintenance storage closet at 2:37 a.m. On October 2nd, her fob was used to access the clubhouse office at 11:53 p.m. On November 9th, her fob was used to access the mailroom at 1:14 a.m. Greg said, these are all areas where items have gone missing. Maintenance supplies, petty cash from the clubhouse office, and packages from the mailroom. We have had complaints for months, but we could not figure out who was taking things. Now we know. I asked Greg what he was going to do. He said, I am calling the police. This is theft, and it is beyond what I can handle internally. I also need to inform the HOA board. Tracy will be removed from her committee role immediately, and they will decide if they want to pursue legal action. I asked him if he needed me to stay. He said, not right now, but I will need you to give a statement to the officer when they arrive. Can you come back in an hour? I said yes and left. I sat in my car in the parking lot trying to process what I had just learned. Tracy had not just framed me for a bike room violation. She had been stealing from the HOA for months, and when I confronted her about selective enforcement, she panicked and tried to pin it on me. The bike room accusation was a distraction. She needed a scapegoat, and I was convenient. An hour later, I went back to the office. A Tampa Police Department patrol car was parked near the entrance. Inside, a deputy was talking to Greg and Diane. The deputy introduced himself as Officer Ramirez. He asked me to walk him through everything, starting with the violation notice. I showed him the doorbell footage, the GPS log, the bike room entry log, and the portal audit screenshot. Officer Ramirez took notes and asked a few clarifying questions. He said, this is enough for me to open an incident report. I will need to interview Tracy Benson as well. Do you know where she is? Greg said, she is probably at home. I can give you her address. Officer Ramirez nodded. He said, I will follow up with her this evening. In the meantime, I am issuing an incident number for your records. If this turns into a criminal investigation, you will need it. He handed me a card with the incident number written on it. I thanked him and left. That night, I could not stop thinking about what would happen next. Tracy had been caught, but I did not know if she would face real consequences. I texted Laura and told her what had happened. Laura replied, thank God. She has been terrorizing this community for years. I hope they actually do something this time. The next morning, I got a call from Greg. He said, I need you to come back to the office. There has been a development. I drove over immediately. When I got there, Greg was standing in the lobby with Officer Ramirez and another man in a suit. Greg introduced the man as David Chen, the attorney for the HOA board. David shook my hand and said, we have reviewed the evidence, and we are taking immediate action. Tracy Benson has been removed from the architectural committee, and we are filing a formal complaint with the police. We are also conducting an audit of all committee activities for the past 2 years. Officer Ramirez said, I went to Tracy's home last night. She refused to answer questions without an attorney, which is her right. But I obtained a search warrant this morning, and we executed it an hour ago. We found stolen items in her home, including maintenance supplies, clubhouse petty cash, and multiple packages that were reported missing by residents. We also found a set of brand new work gloves taken from HOA storage. Tracy is being charged with theft and abuse of access privileges. David said, we are also expunging the violation notice from your record and issuing a full refund of any fees you paid. The board has voted to change the admin access procedure so that committee members no longer have unsupervised portal access. and we are requiring all access logs to be reviewed monthly by an independent auditor. I asked David if Tracy would face any other consequences. He said, that will be up to the criminal justice system. But as far as the HOA is concerned, she is done. I thanked them and left. As I walked to my car, I saw Tracy standing near the entrance to the building. She was with another woman, who I assumed was her attorney. Tracy saw me and glared. She said, "This is not over. You ruined my reputation." I stopped and turned to face her. I said, "You ruined your own reputation when you started stealing and framing people." Tracy stepped toward me, but her attorney grabbed her arm and pulled her back. The attorney said, "Do not say anything." Tracy jerked her arm free and said, "I am the one who decides what counts." But her voice cracked, and she looked away. Over the next few days, the story spread through Juniper Grove like wildfire. Neighbors stopped me in the parking lot to thank me for exposing Tracy. Laura sent me a text. "You are a hero." The HOA posted a notice on the community bulletin board explaining that Tracy had been removed and that the board was implementing new accountability measures. The notice did not mention the theft charges, but everyone knew. Marco called me and said, "I heard Tracy tried to recruit me as a witness against you. I am glad you got her before she got me." 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the HOA board. The letter stated that the board had completed its audit and found multiple violations of committee procedures by Tracy Benson. The board had voted to reverse the enforcement action against me and expunge the entry from my record. The letter also included a check for $50, the amount Tracy had tried to fine me. It was a refund of fees that hit the ledger like a slap. I deposited the check the same day. A month later, I ran into Diane at a coffee shop near the management office. She said, "You would not believe what happened after you left." Tracy kept calling the office, demanding that we reinstate her access. She said the charges were made up and that you and Greg conspired against her. Finally, Greg had to send her a cease and desist letter. She has not called since. Diane also told me that during the police search, they found a stash box in Tracy's garage. The box was full of stolen items, packages, maintenance tools, clubhouse office supplies, and even a set of resident parking permits. Tracy claimed she was storing the items temporarily, but the police did not believe her. She was caught with a stash box and could not talk her way out. The criminal case is still pending, but I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Tracy is trying to negotiate a plea deal. Her attorney is arguing that she has no prior record and that the items she stole were low value. The prosecutor is pushing for restitution and probation. I do not know what will happen, but I know she will never hold power in an HOA again. As for me, life at Juniper Grove went back to normal. I still do my maintenance rounds, fix the sprinklers, and keep the clubhouse lockable. But now, when I see a violation notice taped to someone's door, I check the portal logs to make sure it is legitimate. And when I hear someone complain about selective enforcement, I tell them my story. Because the only way to stop people like Tracy is to shine a light on what they are doing and refuse to back down. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after everything went down, I was fixing a gate motor near the bike room when I saw a woman walking toward me. She was carrying a clipboard and wearing an HOA volunteer badge. My stomach tightened, but then I recognized her. It was Laura. She said, "I volunteered for the architectural committee. I figured after everything that happened, we need people who will actually follow the rules." I smiled and said, "That is a good idea." Laura said, "And I am going to make sure the access logs get reviewed every month, just like the new policy says. No more Tracy Bensons." I went back to work, tightening the gate motor bolts. The bike room door was still propped open with a wooden wedge. I walked over, removed the wedge, and let the door swing shut. The lock clicked into place. I tested the handle. Secure. I pulled out my phone and marked the repair as complete in the maintenance app. Then I walked back to my truck, threw my tools in the bed, and drove home. That night, I got a message from Marco. He said, I heard the HOA board is looking for a new property management company. Clearwater Residential Services lost the contract after the Tracy incident. Greg is still there, but Diane told me they are closing the Tampa office and consolidating everything in St. Petersburg. I guess they did not want the liability. I replied, good. Maybe the next company will have better access controls. Marco sent back a thumbs up emoji. A few days later, I got another letter from the HOA board. This one was an apology. The letter stated that the board recognized the harm caused by Tracy Benson's actions and the failure of the previous management company to detect the abuse. The board committed to implementing stronger oversight and ensuring that no homeowner would face retaliation for raising legitimate concerns. The letter was signed by all 5 board members. I folded it and put it in my records folder, next to the refund check stub and the incident report card from Officer Ramirez. I also kept the violation notice Tracy gave me. I framed it and hung it on my wall next to my maintenance certifications. It is a reminder that the rules only work if everyone follows them, and that the people who scream the loudest about violations are often the ones breaking the rules. Every time I look at it, I remember the moment Tracy waved her key fob in my face and said, I am the one who decides what counts. And every time I think, not anymore. The story does not end there, though. About 3 months after Tracy was removed, I was sitting in my unit one evening when I heard a knock on my door. I opened it and found a man in his 50s wearing a suit. He introduced himself as Robert Hayes, the new president of the Juniper Grove HOA board. He said, I wanted to thank you personally for what you did. Tracy caused a lot of damage, and if you had not pushed back, she would still be in power. I invited him in, and we sat at my kitchen table. Robert said, the board has been going through Tracy's old files, and we found even more evidence of misconduct. She approved contracts with vendors who overcharged the HOA, and we think she was getting kickbacks. We are working with an attorney to recover the funds. Robert also told me that several homeowners had come forward with their own stories of being targeted by Tracy. One woman said Tracy filed a noise complaint against her after she refused to vote for Tracy's friend in a board election. Another man said Tracy threatened to tow his car unless he stopped asking questions about the HOA budget. Robert said, we are trying to rebuild trust, but it is going to take time. I asked him what the board was doing differently. He said, for starters, we are requiring all committee members to undergo training on fair enforcement and conflict of interest rules. We are also implementing a formal appeals process so that homeowners can challenge violations without fear of retaliation. And we are hiring a new management company that specializes in transparency and accountability. I thanked Robert for the update. As he was leaving, he turned and said, if you ever want to get involved with the board, let me know. We could use someone who is not afraid to stand up to bullies. I told him I would think about it. After he left, I sat on my couch and stared at the framed violation notice on the wall. I had not planned to become an HOA crusader, but I also had not planned to get framed for theft. Sometimes you do not choose the fight. The fight chooses you. A few weeks later, I was at the mailbox cluster picking up my mail when I saw Tracy's former rolling file cart sitting in the trash area near the dumpster. The cart was bent on one side, and the wheels were missing. Someone had scrawled garbage across the top with a black marker. I stood there for a moment, staring at it. That cart had been Tracy's signature prop, the thing she used to intimidate people into compliance. Now it was rusting in a trash pile. I took a photo and sent it to Marco with the caption Karma. He replied with 3 laughing emojis. The criminal case against Tracy finally went to trial in the spring. I was called as a witness. The prosecutor asked me to describe the bike room incident, the portal lockout, and the access log evidence. Tracy's attorney tried to argue that the access logs were unreliable and that I had a personal vendetta against her. But the prosecutor played the doorbell footage on a screen in the courtroom, and the jury saw me leave my unit and drive away at the exact time Tracy claimed I was breaking into the bike room. The prosecutor also called Marco as a witness. Marco testified about the vendor pressure tactics and the fake harassment complaints. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and found Tracy guilty on 3 counts of theft and 1 count of abuse of public access. The judge sentenced Tracy to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and full restitution to the HOA and the affected homeowners. The judge also banned her from serving in any HOA leadership role for 10 years. As the bailiff led Tracy out of the courtroom, she turned and looked at me. Her expression was blank. She did not say anything. She just turned and walked through the door. Outside the courthouse, Marco and I stood on the steps and watched the traffic go by. Marco said, "I still cannot believe she thought she would get away with it." I said, "She probably would have if she had not tried to frame me." Marco nodded. He said, "That is the thing about people like Tracy. They get so used to getting away with small abuses that they think they are invincible. And then one day, they push too hard, and it all comes crashing down." I went home that afternoon and took the framed violation notice off my wall. I put it in a drawer. I did not need to look at it anymore. The fight was over, and I had won. Not because I was smarter or stronger than Tracy, but because I refused to let her lies stand. I gathered evidence, found allies, and forced the system to work the way it was supposed to. And in the end, that was enough. Juniper Grove is quieter now. The new architectural committee sends out violation notices that are actually fair, and the new management company responds to maintenance requests within 24 hours. I still do my rounds, fix the gates, and keep the sprinklers running. But now when I walk past the bike room, I do not tense up. I just keep walking. Because the rules are the rules, and everyone follows them. Even the people who used to think they were above them. More HOA chaos soon.